Hello everyone, we are now live. So today I'm going to be continuing the sculpt of maybe Mr. Dobby. I'm not entirely sure if this is Dobby anymore. He might be. And I'm just going to be having fun with this guy here. So yeah, I'm going to be taking your questions and we are just going to be having a nice little conversation about sculpting and anything that's on your mind. I just need to load in one of my custom brushes that I'm still developing. This is the clay tubes. So yeah, I'm just gonna get cracking. If people can just confirm in the chat that this is all good, then I'll just get started. I'm gonna be assuming everything is good until proven otherwise. So I'm just gonna be working this character up a little bit now, just working over a few different areas, trying to add a bit more mid-frequency to him. He's obviously quite a rough looking dude, so I'm gonna probably roughen him up even more and just try to break up a lot of things. One thing I think he's missing is just a lot more asymmetry. I think we need to make sure that he looks almost like he's made with real world clay, and whenever you make something with clay, stuff is just crazy off. It's like if you actually measure the ear position and such on clay sculptures, unless you've been very, very, very attentive to what's going on, it's got to be all over the place. Hey Logan, good seeing you here. Really cool to see your progress when it comes to sculpting. Once in a while, somebody comes out of the 3D industry and they just blow me away, and that, my friend, is you. So good job. It's really cool to see how you're just progressing. So I'm just gonna play around with this dude here. I don't really know entirely where I'm gonna take him. Well, I know I'm gonna take him into more Dobby territory. I think I'm gonna try to make him really, really depressed. Maybe like old Polish Iron Curtain kind of style depression or something. I'm not entirely sure. But this guy here is not gonna have a good time. Maybe that would be fun when a house elf but set in the Soviet Union. That would be a pretty depressing thing. So I'm just gonna doodle around. I really enjoy doing these kind of sculpts, just full on asymmetry and just not caring about if this here would have good topology or anything like that. Just having fun for me. Very different kind of story if you're doing this for a portfolio, of course, because then it's not fun for you. Then it's something that you need to impress an employer with. I'm really enjoying this brush that I'm using now. I've always had a hard time with the clay tubes, so I made my own one. Basically, I modified the alpha a little bit and some additional settings for it. In general, the default brushes in ZBrush are excellent, but you can always make them excellenter, right? Yeah, so whatever questions you guys have or comments on the sculpting workflow, if you guys have any suggestions, let me know. One thing that's actually I would like anyone somebody's advice on is something that's really bothering me in ZBrush right now, and see if somebody knows this one. If you're doing Dynamesh, or sorry, the mask, topology masking with the transpose tools, it's blurry now. It didn't used to be blurry, it used to be sharp, which is really, really annoying. Of course, you can sharpen it up, but that takes ages. And is really hard to see. So if anyone knows how to make that not blurry anymore, that would be fantastic, because topology masking is basically broken at the moment, in my opinion. But there might be a setting. I thought there was a setting under here and transpose and the blur, but this is just how much it blurs when you control tap. So, I don't know. Very annoying if you need to use it for something like posing fingers or something. I had a mentorship review recently now where I was doing that. So yeah, I just need to do a lot of manual masking with this. One thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to add a lot of plane changes as well to him, just making sure that it's not that the shapes are fundamentally round, which they often are on real characters. It's where we are going in and just trying to make him generally more planar, which is hard because you have to make more choices then. So stuff being soft made easy peasy, you just smooth things out. But making actual choices for making things planar, it's a little more intimidating. Yeah, the reason I'm going a bit crazy with this kind of sculpting technique is because I've just had it with the more realistic sculpting for a little while now, the nice, smooth, shiny stuff is also because it takes so much time to do. And I know I can do it to a high level, but it just takes a very, very, very long time to get that right. So this is why I'm doodling around with this. This is a lot more economical in terms of the strokes and such, because obviously you can't do all the high frequency stuff to the same degree. But also because I'm just enjoying a lot more. Every once in a while I go a little bit crazy with sculpting, where I just need to do some stupid asymmetrical sculpts just to... It's not even to express myself, but it's to have fun with sculpting again. It's really easy to get locked into a world where you're doing sculpting for other people. This is what a lot of people who's been studying would be experiencing. You start off in first year and you're just doing assignments. You don't really know enough about sculpting or 3D to do something for yourself. Even if you're not studying, you often have that. Then you're getting to a higher level and now you have to do portfolio pieces. You start doing portfolio pieces not for yourself, because you shouldn't. You should build portfolio pieces to get a job. And then you start working and you are now working on cool things and you can't show them for 2-3 years. So you're spending all your spare time building portfolio pieces, so you make sure you have something if anything happens to you, if you don't get renewed or anything like that, because otherwise you don't have no portfolio. And then you're 3-4 years into your career and you're realizing that you haven't actually had fun with sculpting or 3D in a very long time. This is what a lot of people I talk to experience. And there isn't really a lot of fixes for that, because it's tricky when it comes to portfolio pieces, because early in your career, you kind of just need to have a portfolio. But as you progress, it becomes a lot more about your CV, because if somebody's been working on 20 video games or something, right, like they should know that they're in a fairly decent spot. But if somebody only has a year of experience, it's hard to know. You kind of need to know that they're solid, and that's where portfolio comes in. I think the best way to build a portfolio, though, is to acknowledge that it's not for you, it's for a studio, but to still make it something that you enjoy. I think it's very difficult to build a portfolio if you're not having fun with it. Then it feels generally just like work, and you're going to try to find shortcuts and you're not going to spend as much time on it. But if you have something that you just, like I had this before, where I'm waking up and I'm just excited to work on something, that is good fun. Then you're going to be in a good spot when it comes to that. The difference between two pieces, one piece is made with genuine love and care, and the other one is made because it's a tick box. Those two pieces are very different, even if it's the same person making them. Trying to go through and basically rough up every single surface, just trying to make it look a lot nicer. Yeah, here's a comment about the eyes. Eyes are really, really, really hard to get right. Something that can help with eyes is just understanding the pure structure of eyes. If you understand the structure of eyes, you're going to be in a much better spot. So we can quickly talk about that. What we have is, for the top eye, we basically have one curve point here and one curve point here, and it goes like this, zoop, like so. And then for the bottom eye, we have 2 points, or 2 lines, two lines but 3 points. So it goes like this and it goes like this. Zoop. And then we have the carancula here. And then we have, of course, the top lid, and there's thickness to it. Really, really, really important to understand the thickness, that there is genuine thickness. And for the bottom one, we have, sometimes goes around here, but not fully. But this is what it can look like. And then it goes around here. Again, thickness. And this wraps around the actual eyeball. Then on top here, we have a fat pad. And on the bottom, we also have a fat pad. And this is where we go in and we have the bones here that goes around it like so. And once you understand this structure, then eyes become manageable. If you don't understand the structure, eyes are always going to be hard, because you genuinely need to understand it. So what's happening is that here we have the cheekbone going around, and there's a zygomatic going here. This goes over here as well, and this goes over here. So this is all bone. And then we have this part here, which is a combination of flesh and fat. Then we have this part here, which is the part that articulates. And you need this plane change here. And then we have the tear duct here. So once you understand this, then the eyes become manageable. But again, if you don't, then you just need to study. Then it's like trying to say something in language where you don't really understand the words. You just need to study a little bit more. But that's fine. It's not that complicated. The complicated thing is not really understanding the structure. The complicated thing is doing it. It's studying this by doing a lot of studies. When it comes to studying for characters like this, you can't just intellectually know it. You just need to practice a lot. Like I mentioned in previous streams, the first thing you need quality instructions, which is kind of what I talked about now. This is like mid-quality instructions. It's rushed, but it's hopefully a starting point. And then you need to practice a lot, and then you need to get feedback on it as well. What would be your recommended software for presenting or rendering a character? Arnold turntables take forever, so I was wondering if there's something like Marmoset would be a better choice. That really depends on what kind of character you're doing. If you are doing let's say you're doing a fully realistic version of Mr. W here, and you having advanced skin, and you're like multiple like SSS and multiple layers of specularity and displacements and all that kind of stuff, then you just kind of got to suck it up and do Arnold for this, because Arnold for me is the best engine by far when it comes to skin. I think it's just better than the other ones. But if you're doing something more stylized, like if you're doing something like this, which doesn't really have, it's only sculpt, it's only basically a sculpt. You just take a decimated version in. Marmoset would be totally fine. Skin in Marmoset is, even with ray trace skin, is significantly worse than Arnold. Like it's just not the same. It's just quantitatively different in quality with that. One middle ground you can do is Blender actually. Cycles is really, really fast, and I find the GPU rendering to be really good. So if you want to do GPU rendering, that's really solid. GPU rendering in Arnold is really not amazing. It's good when it works, but you can tell it's not something they've properly focused on. So GPU rendering in Cycles is actually really good, and that's really, really fast as well. But it really depends on what kind of character you are rendering and what requirements there are. The moment you don't need skin anymore, or like SSS, advanced SSS, so if you're doing something more stylized, then Marmoset, go for it. You can also use Keyshot as well, but if you're doing a full portfolio particularly if you're going into film, then Arnold is the way to go. Of course, you have RenderMan and such, but that's the same thing, right? Basically, the same kind of engine. The thing with Arnold is that it's not optimized in a way like that. It's not that, like, it's just samples. It's not really using any clever tricks, and the problem with clever tricks, it's just not accurate. Arnold is accurate, but it's slow as a result. You can throw anything at Arnold, and it's going to render it, and it's just going to work, but the price you pay for it is that it's slow. What you can do, what some people are doing for the real, is paying for render farm services. I know a guy some years ago who he built a showreel, the one he used to get a job in London, and he paid like, this is back in day, right? But he paid like $200-300 for it, and the whole showreel, like a minute or two, rendered in like 3 minutes. He just got the whole thing back, and for me, rendering that much would take probably a few weeks to render. The funny thing is that the faster your rendering gets, meaning the more power you get, the faster GPU gets, the rendering doesn't get faster, because the faster it gets, you're like, ooh, I can have more samples now. It's not going to be noisy anymore. So now you up the samples, and it takes the same amount of time. This is something that you're always seeing. Like, rendering is obviously much faster now than when Pixar made their first movies, like Toy Story. And Pixar's render time is much higher than it was as well. And obviously they had to render Toy Story today. You could render Toy Story literally in real time, and it would look much better. No render time at all. But the render times is through the roof, just because of we just like, oh, nice, cool, new tools to play with. I can now have more subdivision levels and less noise, and I can spend more time on polishing everything. And yeah, that's often how it goes. Sure, you can optimize stuff, right? But that's often how it goes. That's also something with Arnold. Arnold is not really something you can optimize. You really only have a few sliders. That's fine. You could try V-Ray as well. V-Ray is something that's much faster for certain things, but because you can actually play around with that and optimize that a bit. But if you're going to do characters, man, the characters are fully realistic characters. They just take time to do. If you're doing it for games, obviously don't use Arnold, because that's a fully ray traced engine. Like, you don't want to do that, because your games are not going to be rendered in Arnold, then render them in something like Marmoset or Unreal or anything like that. It really depends on what it is you want to do. That's one of the annoying things. Almost a lot of my advice goes down to, well, it depends. How do I make a character? Well, it depends. What brush should I use? It depends on what polygon should I use. Well, it depends on what you want to do. So it's always really handy, as a little tip, if you're asking, let's say you want to ask professionals for feedback on your work. So if you're emailing somebody or asking people on Discord for feedback, it's really, really helpful to be very specific with what you want to do. Try to not overwhelm them with just a wall of text, because then you're never going to get back to you. But if you're trying to email them asking for feedback and you're saying, hey, I wanna do characters, cool. Can't feedback that. It's just too vague. But if you're like, yeah, I want to do characters for AAA games, and this is what I enjoy doing, like, all right, cool, we can work with that. And here's a sample of the work I'm currently doing. We can work with that. But if it's a vague 2-sentence email about something, like, we're just not going to get back to that. We just don't have time for it. One of the most annoying emails people get, like professional artists often get, are from students who are been asked by their school to write a paper on the industry, and now somebody who's been VFX supervising for 25 years gets a generic email from a student at a UK university about, they don't really care at all about it. The student don't care at all. They just want a mark. They just want a high grade, right? And it's completely pointless. So whenever I get these emails, I always ask, do you genuinely want to improve your art, or do you want to get a good grade? And if it's a good grade, I just cannot be bothered with that, because grades do not matter, like in any way. And hey, we have a Black Friday sale. We have a Black Week sale now, which is going this week and next week. We have tons of cool stuff. Speaking of rendering, here's one that Morten did. It came out a few weeks ago. This is the, hey, 1 rating, 5 stars, great. This is the portfolio kit. This is a new version of the lighting since we have. So if you're using Blender, this is only for Blender at the moment. You can just drag and drop your characters in, and it's just going to look super sick right away. Basically no setup needed. You just drag them in and you make sure your characters you pick a lighting scene you want, and then you hit render, and you're good to go. I really like rendering in Blender. Blender doesn't have all the features that Arnold does, and the skin shading is not as good, and there are some annoying things here and there. But if you need to take something up to almost the highest quality, I find Blender to be really good. But I still use Arnold and Maya for when I really need to take it up to the best quality I can. One of the reasons is also because of XGen, because often you just need hair on your characters, and XGen, with all its insane faults, still is kind of the best choice we have, which is really sad, because it means we don't really have any choices for hair. But it's still realistically probably the best choice we have for hair at the moment, sadly. Well, not best choice, the best choice that is still available. You still have Yeti as well, and you have tons of different tools, but they can also get very pricey. Please tell me where we get the clay alpha you're using now. You can't. This is a custom brush I'm working on. I've had a lot of requests for this, and we're probably going to release it as a really cheap, like $2 pack or something of Fliphomes. But so far we haven't made any decisions as to that yet. But probably keep your eye peeled on our social media, and we're probably going to announce it there as well. Because I'm really enjoying this. Like, this is really the first few days of me. I made this brush like 3 days ago, so I'm still pretty fresh with it. But I'm really enjoying using it. It's a really nice brush. It's obviously not the brush that makes the sculpt, right? But helps. For me, the question, what brush are you using, is not a stupid one. I find that people are almost a bit insulted by the question that, it's not the brush you're using, it's the artist. Yeah, cool. But which brush are you using though? Like, if you're having a hard time with the medium, it's really tricky to get something that looks right. If you're trying to sculpt all your characters and you only use the default clay tubes brush, man, you're gonna have a hard time. It's a hard brush to master. It's a hard brush to use. Or if you're only using standard and smooth, right? Or if you're only using the default clay buildup brush, like, man, you gotta customize that kind of stuff, right? That's gonna make your life a lot easier. So I don't think it's a stupid question at all, particularly if you're using something like if you're painting, something like Photoshop or Procreate, where you probably need custom brushes for this kind of stuff. And yeah, you just need to know. So of course, there is such a thing as a stupid question, right? I don't think inherently what brush you're using is a stupid question. I think if you're assuming that somebody with 5 years experience is absolutely crushing it with sculpting, and the reason they're crushing it is because of the brush, I think that's a little silly. But at the same time, right, still need to know. It's like, what render engine are you using? Well, it doesn't really matter. You can make the same thing with all of them, but it still matters. The tool you're using, it does matter. I think it's annoying when people are giving advice on software, like the software doesn't matter. It's all about what you know. Yeah, sure, there is an underlying truth to that, but at the same time, if let's say it's between using 3D Studio Max or Maya, if you're going to go into film, I mean, man, use Maya. It has nothing to do with which is the better tool. It's just what's being used a lot. Should you use Fusion or Nuke for comp work? Well, you should absolutely use Nuke. Is it better? I don't know. I'm not a comper, but nobody uses Fusion for comp. So it's a completely irrelevant question. That sure, if you can comp like crazy in Fusion and you want to transfer to Nuke, you can do that. But if you're equal and there is somebody else are you equal and using the wrong software and somebody else is using the correct one, like the correct one, I mean the one you want to get employed at, well, you just have a disadvantage. Something I think is really important to know when you're applying for jobs. This is not to be depressing at all. This is just the truth of it. You're at a disadvantage. There are just other applicants, and that means if there are other applicants that are relevant for a position, you just have competition, which means you are at a disadvantage. Do everything you can to remove this disadvantage, and one of them is using the software that is used a lot. If you're using Maya and you want to be a modeler in film, you can kind of be thrown into production on day one. Sure, you have to know some stuff about pipeline and Linux and all that kind of good stuff, but you still kind of know the software. I hear a lot of things, which is a little weird, that when you join a studio, the version of Maya is unrecognizable. It really isn't. It genuinely isn't. If you're using something maybe highly specialized, maybe for rendering or effects or something, like maybe they're doing that. But at all the studios I was at, Maya was Maya, modeling was modeling. They had custom stuff on top of it. But if you know Maya, it's still Maya. Though with Maya, one of the cool things is you can turn it basically into anything because it's so customizable. Just evaluating the model a little bit. I think it's important to zoom out or just stop rotating and then just see what's going on. It's really easy to get lost in the details, particularly when doing something like this where we're just clay tubing around. I think it's important to look at the model from below and above as well. Yeah, the thing with Autodesk software, like Panda's mentioning here, like nobody likes the Autodesk software. Like nobody's like, hell yeah, I just love using 3D Studio Max. It's just a tool. And if Maya disappeared, if all 3D software disappeared and I only had Max, I would happily use Max, right? Because it's 3D. 3D is cool. But it seems like people love to use Blender because Blender is a funny one. But the Autodesk software, they're corporate, and there's not a crazy amount of innovation in them when it comes to. There's innovation, but not when it comes to the public user, if you will. There's a lot of stuff that is for enterprise customers, and once you start to think about these tools as almost like as enterprise tools, then it makes a lot of sense. A lot of stuff that's happening in Maya over the last few years are all about USD. If you're a regular user, meaning you're hobbyist, or if you're a freelancer or something like that, you're probably not going to be using, or student, you're probably not going to be touching USD. It's still in development as such, and that's okay. So it means that a lot of stuff that they're cooking up, you're never ever going to use. Totally fine. And at the same time, if you're a studio, you're like, hell yeah, USD, right? They're building stuff for a different market than what you're using. The same with like AutoCAD, right? Like not a single hobbyist would use AutoCAD. Be like, yeah, I'm just going to design a bridge in my bedroom, right, for fun. You're just not going to do that. So a lot of stuff when it comes to Maya and Max, they're for enterprise. They're not like Blender has fun toys, which is really cool. Like it has a lot of really fun things, cool features, it's shiny and all that. But if you're a professional and you make money from your tools, you don't necessarily care about shiny and all that. You care about can it lift a lot of heavy stuff. I keep comparing different software to like different vehicles, right? For me, I compare I think about Maya as a tractor, and I don't mean that as an old and clunky. Tractors are cool. Like there are a lot of modern tractors are really interesting machines, and they look great and all that kind of stuff, but they're industrial tools. They're designed to do industrial work. They're not going to just use a tractor to go with your friends, right? Or to go on a road trip with a tractor, or to try to go on the Autobahn in Germany and drive as fast as you can. But man, if you need to do heavy lifting or collect 10,000 crops a day, it's great. So it's a different use case for it. While Blender is almost like an electric car, really fun and fast to use and all that kind of stuff. But also, you don't necessarily want to use it for the heaviest of the lifting. Kiwi is asking, have you met people in the industry that are both 3D artists and also programmers? Do they use both skills? Knew a guy, Dineg, absolute genius of a guy. He was a modeler, really high level modeler, but he also made his own software, like made his own sculpting software and what is it called? Shot sculpting software. So he was just doing really well, and it happens. A lot of people, like particularly in modeling, they don't really do that, particularly with sculpting. So he was a bit of a unique character or unique person because of that. But a lot of people, most people don't really do that, but it definitely happens. If you can make software, particularly if you can do scripts and such, you're really valuable. But it's hard to be good at both because they're obviously two completely separate disciplines as well. There's very little overlap between software development, like not just talking about making a Python script, but software developer versus like 3D modeling. But yeah, if you're good at both, there's definitely a lot of jobs there for you. Also, like just self-employed, right? You can make tons of cool. If it's either like plugins or add-ons for software, or like that kind of stuff, which you can of course monetize. Like look at Box Cutter for Blender, really cool stuff. Or just the modeling toolkit in Maya. That was an add-on or plugin in Maya Speak, which was acquired by Autodesk. Python was always something I want to get into, and if you're a rigger, it's phenomenally useful because you automate stuff all the time. But the issue was almost that I was in not an issue, right? It was a very privileged position to be in, but I was in character sculpting, and first you can't really program in ZBrush. You have like C script, but it's not really programming, right? Not to the same degree as Python. So you can't really optimize stuff. You can't really automate stuff in ZBrush to the same degree. And if you're just texturing or sculpting for characters, there generally just isn't too much automation you can do on a day-to-day. You can, of course, build overall tools, but it's not like you can just make a script to make your sculpting faster. It is just a lot of specific manual work. So I never really got into that. Sure, it's something I could have invested time in my spare time, and I did do some of that, but it's really beneficial if you need to use it, or you can find solutions day-to-day in your work for that. Here's a good question. I just did a donut tutorial. Any recommendations on where to go next? I'm a bit lost and I plan to grow my skills as I keep on going. So actually, this is a good example of where we have a bunch of tutorials here. We have a lot of really, really good Blender tutorials. So you can check this out here. This is where we can just check this out. 3D, what are called 3D Tutor. They have a lot of really good tutorials for Blender as well. So you can check this out here. So there are tutorials. Once I've shown you this, I'll give you some advice, specific advice. But check out 3D Tutor. These guys are doing brilliant, brilliant work. So when it comes to learning 3D, I'm obviously biased because I make tutorials for a living, but I think watching tutorials all day long is not a particularly good idea. I think, like I talked about this before, there are 3 things you need to get really good at anything fast. You need quality instructions. Quality instructions can come from a person, like a teacher. It can come from a tutorial, or it can come from like a book or something like that. Books for 3D are terrible because they're out of date in like 2 months. So there aren't a lot of books, but all the good tutorials. So first you need some kind of quality instructions. That's where Enterprises, Blender or Intro to Blender, the donut is great because it's high quality and all that. But obviously it doesn't take you through the whole thing. And the second thing you need is you need just a lot of mileage. You just need to practice. This is what I mean by the whole, you shouldn't just watch tutorials, because if you just watch tutorials, you're not practicing. You're getting a lot of high quality instructions, but that is not enough. This is almost like if you want to get really strong at the gym, you're just reading a lot about strength training exercise. Man, you just gotta lift a lot. But in the same way, just lifting a lot at the gym isn't necessarily enough, because you need nutrition and you need discipline and all this kind of stuff. But you really need to just do a lot of work. You just need mileage. You need to practice a lot. The way you practice is one of my best ways, my best piece of advice for learning 3D is try to build stuff that's on your desk. Try to find simple things. Look at pencils or pens or simple things to see around. Like here I'm seeing a cable and a box. I've seen some AirPods, an AirPods case, that kind of stuff. My phone is here. I have a Stream Deck, some supplements, that kind of stuff. Simple stuff. Try to keep it simple. I have some more advanced things, like I have an ergonomic mouse. That kind of stuff is a bit more complex. So you can try to figure out different categories and then try to build it. Now, you're going to get stuck. And when you get stuck, you don't really know how to improve, right? Like, how do I do a specific thing? But then you can figure out a tutorial for that. So how I often prefer to learn stuff is I personally prefer to just jump in the deep end. I'm a bit silly like that because I could probably save a lot of time by just watching more tutorials. But what I prefer, like this is how I'm learning DaVinci Resolve at the moment, for instance. I just jump in and I try to edit a video. And I try to edit a real thing, not just like a dummy video. I don't download video files from the internet because that doesn't apply to me. I'm trying to record a video and I'm trying to edit this video. And then there's always something I don't know. Then I Google that. It can be, how do I quick export something out of DaVinci? And then I figure that out, right? Find some forum posts, find a tutorial on YouTube, and then I just add that to my arsenal. If I just were to only watch DaVinci tutorials, I wouldn't have edited a single video yet because it wouldn't be ready. I really think the best way is quality instructions and just practice a lot. But yeah, like you can't just practice a lot because that's only one of the parts to learning. So if you only practice, then you're going to be all over the place because you have no idea what's right or not. And you just need to get feedback on your work as well. But I quote instructions, get a lot of mileage, and then get feedback on your work. So trying to build something on your desk is phenomenal because then you're going to learn about everything kind of naturally in a way. Let's say you're trying to do like there's a note here, just a post-it note, trying to build that. All right, cool. How do you build that? Well, you can build a plane, right? All right, cool. It's yellow. How do I make something yellow? Well, you can can make a material, and then you can figure that out. You can watch tutorials on materials. All right, cool, but there's text on it. How do I do that? Aha, we need to learn about UV mapping. Okay, what are UV maps? What is that? Well, you can look into that. You can now watch a tutorial on UV mapping, even if it's like you're just buying an intro to Blender course, like one of the many ones we have on Flip Normals. You can still watch a chapter on that. It's still really useful to have the tutorial series, of course, because they do cover a lot of good stuff. But if you just start with a Blender tutorial, intro to Blender, and you're just watching that start to finish, it's way, way, way too overwhelming. So you're just going to sit there and be like, cool. Don't really know how to apply any of this. But if you watch it first, you get a bit of a feel for what Blender is like. Then you can start to make your own projects, and then you can refer back to it afterwards. I think that's a very, 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 very good way to do it. But just don't get discouraged. Just do a lot of things. And a lot of stuff you do is going to suck in the beginning, and that's totally fine. I think it's good to embrace that. Stuff just sucks in the beginning, and then it's going to suck less and less and less, and you're going to do more and more advanced things. So you're going to probably get quite addicted to creating things, because 3D is one of the mediums I know which is easier to create something. If you want to build something, if you want to build a car or a spaceship, you can just build it. You can build anything you want to. You want to make a short film? Hell yeah, just build it. But you just need to practice. One extra step to the whole quality instructions, mileage, and feedback is teach. So trying to pretend that you're teaching somebody is really, really useful as well. Instead of just like the moment you teach something, you learn so much, because you learn what you don't know, and what you don't know is quite a lot in the beginning. So even for professionals as well as been doing this for a while, the moment you're teaching something, they realize that they've been winging something for a very long time, and then you're forced to learn it. How do I know that? I used to be a professional who winged things all the time. Then I made tutorials, and I realized I was winging things all the time. Even if it's something like sculpting, let's say you have somebody who's good at sculpting, the moment you ask them to, like if they're just self-taught, the moment they're asking to explain something, they're like, I haven't thought about that before. Why do you sculpt like this? Well, I'm not entirely sure. And then you have somebody who's been teaching sculpting for a while, and they know exactly what they're doing. Like they basically articulated their thoughts. It doesn't mean they're a better sculptor than the other person, but if you're a pretty good sculptor, and then you get to articulate your thoughts, you just get to formalize a lot of things you're doing. You could probably make it a lot more efficient. I've personally improved a lot in sculpting after I started teaching it, like quite seriously, like with tutorials and mentorship and such. Any good book for designing stylized characters? I'm not sure about a good book, but I would look into Shane Olsen. Shane Olsen is an absolute master at designing characters. Spelled exactly how you think. Shane Olsen. Really, really, really good artist. He has a lot of very good stuff for stylized characters. If I was doing stylized characters, check that out. Also check out Denny Mac. He has a bunch of stuff on YouTube as well. I think he has some Patreon tutorials too. So we actually had an interview with him many years ago now. I think it was like 2019. Morten and I lived in Japan, and we interviewed him, and interview all done, and then we realized at the end, like once it was all done, that the recording screwed up, and it didn't work. So it is what it is. Life of trying to do YouTube. Yeah, I think feeling overwhelmed with 3D is very normal. Why? Because 3D is overwhelming. When you're starting with 3D, it's often like, cool, I gotta learn this software, gotta learn these techniques, and then I'm good to go. And then you're realizing as you're getting into it that it's almost like life philosophy at the end, where it's about imposter syndrome, and it's about how do you deal with motivation and discipline and time management, and also, if you know all those things, how do you make things? Like if you want to build a robot, you can't just build a robot. You have to kind of understand something about mechanical concepts, or you want to just make a cool house elf. Cool. Gotta learn some stuff about anatomy, right? Like, and then you're learning about the human body, and it's a lifelong journey. 3D is a fun thing to do because you get to learn so many things. The amount of things horrible things I learned when I was working in film about a human body and characters and all that kind of stuff was pretty nasty, because I had to make so many weird characters, like really weird characters, all sorts of diseases. That also comes with the territory. Get a bit desensitized to this after a while. Oh, Denny Mac is great. His stuff is phenomenal. Also check out Creature Box as well. Creature Box is, they're exclusively 2D, but absolutely phenomenal stylized characters. I find that a lot when it comes to, if you want to learn anything like this, if you want to learn stylized characters or realistic sculpting or anything like that, you don't necessarily need tutorials. Sure, tutorial is a shortcut, which is great, but you can learn so much just by studying them, like genuinely doing studies. If you want to learn how to make a realistic character, try to sculpt a specific realistic character, right? Like if you want to learn anatomy, try to sculpt an crochet sculpture. If you want to learn how to make something like if you want to learn how to sculpt like Bernini, try to do a study of one of Bernini sculpts. Sounds simple. It's kind of simple, but not easy. It just means, yeah, you got to do a study. Turns out doing a study is pretty difficult. But it's not difficult to know what to do often. It's just difficult to obviously doing it, which is hard by itself, but also just almost like the mental game of it as well. Going to gym, it's not very difficult to just go to the gym. You just walk to the gym, right? It's 500 meters away. You got to walk 500 meters. Great. The difficult thing is motivating yourself to going. Scheduling and such, right? But it's often like that. I tend to break things into, like, separate things from being easy to simple. Going to the gym, very simple. You just gotta go, put on your shoes, and then you gotta go. Continuously going though, over time, still just going the same thing going to the same place over and over again. Not easy. If it was easy, a lot more people would be doing it. Are we going to see another clicker sculpt and texture for the new seasons of The Last of Us? Well, maybe. Depends what I'm hyped for, but yeah, I could imagine. I don't know where that project went though, so it's I probably deleted it. Tried to find it some months ago, and yeah, that's gone. So gotta redo that. But yeah, that was a fun one. So if we see once season 2 is out, then probably gonna see some new cool stuff from me. The clicker is such a fun one to do because it's such an abstract sculpt in a sense. It's not very anatomical. It's just add crazy mushrooms onto it, and that's just fun to do. Do you know if there are any good alternatives to Marvelous Designer? It's great, but super glitchy. Nope. You have Clo, like CLO, which is made by the same company. And my understanding of it is that's a software that's actually used for manufacturing of clothing, while Marvelous is used for making digital clothing. Right? It's just used to make things for video games or film, and CLO, Clo, is used for actual, like, real world seamstresses. But I never used that. I don't really know too much about it. But that would be the only alternative. Some people are trying to build Blender add-ons or something, but it's not the same. It's Marvelous is really the only software that's doing that at the moment, which is great because it means that there's an actual software for it. The alternative would be that there wasn't a software, so at least I'll take that. The way we did clothing back in the day was just polymodel it, and it always looked terrible because you had to sculpt it up or maybe do some simulation with end cloth or something, and man, that's just not a way to live. I presume you hear this question all the time, but some people say 3D is next on a chopping block because of AI. Do you have any comment on that? Yeah, maybe. It's still, it's a tricky one, right? When it comes to it, if it comes to 3D modeling, it's still pretty crappy. The models they're outputting, that will require a lot of cleanup, and yeah, it's hard to say. Genuinely, we just don't have any data on it at the moment. It also, the whole AI thing is so uncertain. I think it's very, very hard to predict anything because we don't know what's going to happen. Look at Midjourney in early, 2022? Looks crappy, right? It's a really cool proof of concept, but it looks crappy. And then look at it like 2 years later, and it's a completely different software. A lot of people say that AI looks terrible. I really don't think so. I think if people thought generally looked terrible, people wouldn't be scared. Nobody is scared of a competitor that's a lot worse than you. I think people are scared because it's terrifying how good it is. But the models we're seeing for 3D at the moment aren't. Maybe they're going to get better. I mean, who knows, right? It's just, I just really don't want to make predictions about AI because it's such a novel piece of technology. Could really go either way with that. It's also a lot harder to train on 3D as well, like there's the data, because obviously for images you can just scrape all of the internets, and for 3D you can't. Like you obviously can do it, but it's the data sets are a lot heavier and it's a lot harder to get them, and it's a lot harder for somebody here to get an OBJ of this and put this into whatever 3D tools they have to scrape it, or just taking a screenshot of the screenshot. This would be like 300 kilobytes and the model is like 500 megs. And also they don't have access to this file. But if I post this on Twitter, which I might do, right, then they can just scrape that. Do you agree with using AI for concepting and idea development? I know for a fact that a lot of studios are using AI right now without telling people, and a lot of pitches and such are being done with AI. And there are two parts to this. You have the first, that inherently the technology is unethical in the sense that it's all based around stolen data, and that's tricky to get around. At the same time, if somebody wants to use that for to further a career, right? It's hard to make an argument for not using that. A lot of people are talking about how crappy AI is and unethical it is, and then they go back to using ChatGPT for programming, right? Like, is that ethical? I mean, it's all stolen data. It's hard to say. At the same time, it's also hard to say that it's hard to not use it if you know that you have a tool available that can speed up your work significantly, and the end result will be about the same as what you can do, because you can paint over it, you can draw over it. Genuinely, as a concept artist that you have the skills to make it look the same, but you can speed up your work twice. That's tempting to do. So I'm not going to judge people for it, but I think that there are a lot of people who are publicly anti-AI that are still using this in their work. It's hard to know, of course, but that's what I think. I know studios are doing that. I think an issue with AI as well is, like, take away the ethical part. It's just kills creation in a sense. If I could just make a sculpt, if I can input, make Soviet era Dobby, make him sad, right? It put that into an AI. Maybe it will look exactly the same as the final result for this, but I'm enjoying this. This is fun to do. Like, I get pleasure out of doing this. It's therapeutic to sculpt. So sure, I could always keep doing that, but it's like for a lot of things when it comes to 3D and art, the journey is the destination. And this changes a lot when it comes to commercial art, because then the destination is the destination. That's a tricky thing when it comes to anything commercial. That, yeah, cool, we have all these moral things, but we need to deliver. That's always a hard thing. We have a whole podcast episode about this as well, where Morten and I are discussing this. If people are interested, you can just search for Flip Normals on basically any podcast provider like Spotify, and we have an episode of that. It's also on YouTube as well. I mean, also when it comes to AI, it's also a tricky one, because AI is something that's being used, like, it's being added to a lot of software. Like, for instance, I'm using DaVinci Resolve for editing now, and they have a few AI tools that are absolutely phenomenal. Like, I'm not sure how, like, if they're tested in ethical or created with ethical code, or I have no idea. But I know that I can make subtitles for all the YouTube videos we're doing now, and that means that people who are hearing impaired can now watch our YouTube videos, and before they couldn't. Like, it's recently that we started adding subtitles to our videos because DaVinci Resolve can do it. And we can also do text-based editing, which means that my editing process is twice as fast, which means a lot more people can hopefully find enjoyment in our videos because there are more videos coming out. It was really hard. Should I not use subtitle tools? Well, we didn't fire our subtitle guy because we didn't have a subtitle guy. So it just means that more people genuinely get to experience that. So all the short videos we're doing now, they all have subtitles in them. We wouldn't do that. If not, it would take me half an hour to an hour maybe to just create that. It would probably be worse as well. It's very fiddly work to create subtitles. Particularly for like all the full courses we've done. There's just no way I'm going to create subtitles for a 24-hour masterclass. Kind of liking where this guy's going now. Going over with the damp standard now as well, just to enhance some of these things. You can hold on the Alt key as well to get these nice sharp lines. They look nice, quite lovely. Then I'm going to bring in a little skull because I just need to focus a bit on anatomy for this one here. And where is the skull? You can go to deformation and unify and maybe it pops up, and it does. I use a lot of anatomy when I'm working on this. In this case, we have Dobby, which is, you know, obviously a very designed, very stylized character, but just realistified, right? So it's something that he wouldn't have a natural skull, but it's still really useful to look at that. So I'm going to just re-sculpt parts here to fit within the skull. Without symmetry, of course, because why not? The only reason I'm not using symmetry here is because I'm enjoying doing it without symmetry. There's no practical reason for this. The look, though, is a bit different if you do this with or without symmetry. But yeah, it practically is hard to justify not using symmetry. But I don't care. It's my sculpt. I can do what I want. Just trying to get this plane changing. It's really easy when you're sculpting something like this to get locked into a specific design, and then you're looking at it and you don't really know entirely what's going on. This is when I'm going over and just simplifying things down and trying to just re-sculpt it a little bit. I think this is really useful. Also, if you guys are, I'm wondering if you guys have been checking out some of the reels or like the shorts we've been doing, as reels are from Instagram. So we've been making a lot of shorts. So curious if you guys have been watching those. We put a lot of care into them. So I hope that they're nice and fresh content. Here I just need to re-sculpt this a little bit just so we can get in the shapes here. Yeah, the problem with reels in general is that they're just addictive. They're way too addictive. I don't really like watching that stuff myself. It's funny though, sometimes if I'm not feeling well, I just go down into the rabbit hole on Instagram, and sometimes my own reels pop up because it's from a different account, right? So I sometimes see, hey, it's a Flip Almost 3D tutorial, and then I just see my own video. I like making reels because it's a bit of a different challenge, but it's also annoying to make reels because you really can't say a lot in them. you're talking about one simple thing. There's no nuance in anything there, which is annoying because so much in 3D is based on nuance. If you're talking about how to become a good sculptor, I mean, you can't just do that in a minute, right? So it's hard. It's hard to make them. It's hard to figure out. It's hard to find subjects that work within a very short time frame. So just resculpting parts here, just trying to give it some more structure. I'll probably add a lot of flesh back onto this one later on, but just really resculpting it. I find that to be useful if I'm a little bit in trouble with the design, if I don't know entirely where I'm going, to just go through and get in the anatomy. It's very handy. And as you can see, I'm pretty ruthless with this. I'm just going over and forcing in the different shapes. How to get better at texturing in Substance Painter? I recommend the same thing as before, what I said for how to get better at modeling in Blender or working in Blender. I recommend texturing, just generally texturing a lot, and then finding tutorials for that along the way. But Painter by itself is not a very difficult software. It's something you can really pick up in a few hours, I think, in terms of just the core features of it. And then a lot of it is about good workflows and such. A lot of texturing is also down to UVs. But yeah, you just need to do a lot of projects. We also have a lot of tutorials as well for Painter. Let me actually find one of those here. So we have a lot of cool ones. We had one that came out like 2 years ago, which is the we have this one, which is for a character, just a texture face. And then we have the masterclass as well. This one here is also pretty good. This one here covers how to make the whole character start to finish. So this one uses ZBrush for Painter, ZBrush for Sculpting, ZBrush for Painter, yeah. ZBrush for Sculpting, Blender for retopology, and Painter for texture painting. And it goes through all the different steps. So this is one tutorial. This is a bit more holistic than the other one. This one here is almost entirely down to texture painting. So this one covers that as well. So yeah, I do recommend these two tutorials. They're both 50% off at the moment. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, you just gotta texture a lot. There isn't a shortcut for learning anything in 3D. You just need to grease up those elbows and just put in the hours. It's so nice to having Painter, because I didn't when I was learning 3D. So we had to do all these insane hacks. Texturing was one of those things when I started with 3D. Not to sound like a complete grandpa here, but that always just sucked. There just wasn't a solution for it. So it was always these kind of hacks of doing some kind of rudimentary triplanar in Maya or Max, or doing stuff in Photoshop, and it was always painful. You can use body paint, which kind of turned into Cinema 4D as well, and it just was a huge mess. Mari came around, but that was so powerful or so computer intensive that you couldn't run or anything but a supercomputer in Switzerland probably. So yeah, texturing was always really annoying until Painter came about. Like Mari was still a good option because it eventually computers caught up and we could actually run it on regular computers. I can run Mari fine on my computer, but Painter is very easy to use comparatively. It really is like Photoshop, but in 3D. Great stuff. I haven't really used Marmoset a lot, so I can't really comment too much on that. I'm learning it at the moment. I'm just going through it and trying to pick it up bit by bit. But one thing that seems a lot better in Marmoset compared to Painter is baking is just better. You just have a lot more control over it. You can control your cage a lot more than you can in Painter, because Painter you can't. You have to fix that in an external software and then readjust it all the time, which is very annoying. But texture painting in Marmoset, I don't know what it's like. I haven't really done that yet. I assume Painter is more powerful since it has a lot more, has more years under its belt. But for me, they're different software. I also experimented with rendering, seeing how that was, if that's something I could actually use for my own projects. And for me, it's just not really a viable alternative. For me, Painter is, or for me, rendering in Marmoset is just not particularly interesting, just because I already have a good solution with Arnold, and I don't think Marmoset would add anything to my workflow there. It's really good if you want to, like for game dev, it's great, and particularly because it looks so good so fast. But if you know about lighting and rendering, and you know how to set this kind of stuff up, for me, there's no point in using that. But yeah, baking, 10 out of 10, great stuff. Just forcing the shapes. You can see I'm just blocking things in and just ruthlessly trying to get the shapes I want in. I find this to be the best way to do it. If you start to noodle around and you're afraid to change something, it's just going to be hard to change something. But just going in there, getting your hands dirty, and just brutally forcing things in and resculpting things is fine. This is what the stage I'm doing now, I essentially call design versus anatomy. That's something all my mentees will know pretty well. The core concept is that you can divide the sculpting stage into, all the sculpting into two main stages. One is pure design, where the only thing you care about are the shapes appealing, and the second stage is anatomy. It's the anatomy working as it should. And the reason we simplify them into these two stages is because if you're trying to solve design and anatomy at the same time, that is just very, very, very difficult. So right now, I'm only focusing on, is the anatomy correct? And every time you do that, every time you focus on one of them, the other part gets a little bit worse, but it builds a foundation. So once I'm done with this stage now, the pure anatomy pass, I'm going to have to go in and fix the design, because I made the design worse. But that's fine, because it's something I can do. I can just go in and I can just fix it. If you get stuck in when it comes to a character design, it's really, really hard to just get out of that rut where you don't really know how to improve it, and you're just trying to doodle around, finding the references and such. But figuring out that you can, or being analytical and going into, yeah, now I'm doing the design, cool, let's only focus on appealing shapes, and great, now I'm doing anatomy, I'm only focusing on anatomy, is a very, very good way to almost like debug your sculpt, figure out what's wrong with it, and then you can go over and improve it. So for instance, if in this case here, I wasn't feeling the sculpt, I was feeling there was something off with it. How do I improve that? Well, let's be analytical about it. Is the anatomy good? No. Great. All right, cool. Let's fix that. Are the shapes appealing? Yeah, they were okay appealing. But if the anatomy is completely off, then yeah, they gotta change. Have you shared your new clay buildup? Nope, not yet. I will though. I promise. Maybe. We'll probably share it. We just haven't done it yet. You just have to sit down and actually make some marketing materials for it, put up a product page, and also just seeing if there are some more things I can put into that pack, because I don't want to put out something that isn't ready yet. But pretty good. I'm using this all the time now. This brush here has fully replaced my what I used before, which was the clay buildup, just without any, or with Alpha 06. I used to use this Alpha here all the time, and this one here has fully replaced that. So I think it's really good, but that's my opinion. So we're gonna get it out to more people, and hopefully they can, hopefully people can start to enjoy it as well. Are there any good software deals during Black Friday in your opinion? I haven't actually seen a lot. I find that Black Friday right now is a bit silly. Like we have really good deals, 50% off, hey, but we don't. I find a lot of people, they're going like 15% off, which is just a normal sale really. So it feels like Black Friday has degraded a bit to or maybe it was always, it used to be kind of crappy, and then it got insane some years ago, and then it just reverted back to the mean. But yeah, I don't really know. Also, software is a bit tricky because most software today are on a subscription, and they really don't like to discount subscriptions because then they're getting less money long term, right? So I think a lot of software used to be, I don't think most software, all software really used to be paid, right? And then it's all gone over to subscription, which is great if you're running a software company. Fantastic. Then you have your SaaS income and you can just cruise around and make all the money, but it's not great for consumers. So that's where you're seeing a lot of software coming up now, like Affinity, which is paid, and you're seeing what is it called? The one from Procreate. That's the one for the iPad, which is also just pay one-time payment, and it's great. People really like that, and same with DaVinci Resolve as well. It's free to use, and then one-time payment if you want the pro features, which is what we're using. Something like $250 or something, and I would pay that easily again. It's such a good software. So we've been ditching our Adobe bundle. The only software we have now for Adobe is Photoshop, and for that we use in the photography bundle, which is cheaper than the Photoshop bundle. Like it was half the price of the Photoshop bundle, and we get Photoshop and Lightroom, which is cheaper than just Photoshop. Who knows how that works? It's probably some market research they've done, and it makes sense for them. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, we've been very deliberately ditching Adobe. Not even because just the fees, just because it's crappy. The obviously Painter is great. Painter and Designer are phenomenal, but Premiere is the worst software I've used in a very long time. It's so slow and laggy, and DaVinci it's the first time I've actually had fun editing, where I can play around with things and all that. While in Premiere, even on a powerful MacBook Pro, it was still lagging, and same footage, throw it into DaVinci, and it just plays real time without any issues. The first time I realized there was something wrong with Premiere was when I tried Final Cut for the Mac as well, and stuff was real time, and I couldn't understand, if this is real time, why is Premiere so crappy? Yeah, when it comes to Premiere, in terms of enterprise, I have no idea. If you want to be an editor, maybe people use Premiere for that. But if you're editing things for YouTube or for tutorials or something like that, I think Premiere is really, really garbage. The reason I think so is because I've been editing all my things in Premiere for a very, very, very long time. It's just in the last year I've been switching. So all the YouTube videos you're seeing from basically until a year ago or something, they're all edited in Premiere. So I have some authority with this. It's not like I was good at editing, but just stuff wasn't real time. And my editing is very simple. I just need to cut things and add some transitions and such, and add some simple graphics. And couldn't really do that. And not even running 4K, just like HD, a full HD. Yeah, if I didn't, the only thing I really need Photoshop for is content or fill. I use that a lot. It's really good. Not the new Gen AI stuff, but the one that's been there for a long time. I haven't really used the Gen AI stuff, but the content or fill is something that's so handy, because what I use a lot for is if I have to make social media posts for Flip Novels or for newsletters or something, and there is maybe some text in the image that we just have to get rid of, and not that we are using it to generate the characters in the image or something, or fill enhance or something, but if there's a gradient or something, particularly with gradients, the content or fill is phenomenal. So just that, kind of need Photoshop for it. Is ZBrush a paid subscription only? I think it is now, yeah. If you have a perpetual, you can use that forever as far as I know, but that locks for ZBrush 2022. I don't think you can. I think you need to be on a paid plan for ZBrush now. It's just what it is. It's just where the software world has moved. It's not even a new thing at this point. It is just a reality of software that really all software are paid. But also when it comes to like something like Photoshop, the Photoshop was expensive before. It was a real investment to get Photoshop, and you had to pay for upgrades and all that. So like actually subscribing for Photoshop might legitimately be cheaper, at least short term, right? if you get updates and such, than paying for it, because that was a pricey thing. Like with the current tier we're paying for Photoshop, it would be years before we would maybe like 10 years before we would have to we would reach even what it cost to buy Photoshop back in the day. I still have a copy of like CS3 from back in the day. I won it in a competition in a Norwegian newspaper like 15 years ago or something. But yeah, it was very, very expensive. The issue with ZBrush and subscription is, I mean, take away whatever moral part you want or whatever, right? It's a business decision, but the big issue is that it's not legacy. It doesn't support legacy files whatsoever. So if somebody gives you a file made in, if you're in 2024 and somebody makes your file made in 2025, you cannot open that file. Like, but if you're on the subscription, then of course you get the latest version of it. But particularly last version, I think, is 2022, which is the last paid one. So a lot of people are going to be in 2022, and they're perfectly happy with the software. Like, it's not like it's been updated a lot. They have the iPad version, right, which is where they spend a lot of their time. And then they want to get a file from somebody else. They have to upgrade. This is something I've been dealing a lot with in mentorship, because I was in 2022 for a long time. And then we just had to send OBJs back and forth, which in this case was fine. It was more like study sculpts, right? But if you're dealing with something which has layers, or you're in a professional environment, if you're freelancing or something, you generally need to be on the subscription tier. There's just no way around that. You just have to be on that tier, because otherwise you actually can't open files from other people. We had this in production as well on one of the companies I worked at, where we were on a version of ZBrush and we weren't going to change version during production, because you shouldn't change version. And then somebody changed version, they upgraded, and now everyone had to change, because otherwise we couldn't open the files. The files were not backwards compatible at all. One of the annoying things about paid subscriptions, if it's apps and like just on the App Store, and it's something like a note app or something that shouldn't really require any online connectivity or anything. Maybe it does an iCloud sync or something, but it's not like software. Like, it's like it should be done software. It's just finished. It's a calculator. Like spending $1, $3 for a calculator app is pretty insane. Like, I'm using a timer, like a Pomodoro timer, and like, I'm not gonna pay $5 a month for a timer. It's nuts. It's just a done software. If I'm buying like something like that, if I'm getting an app, I never wanted to update. Like, it's a fully done thing for me. Like, if I have an old calculator, that's a done thing. I don't want updates to that thing. It's not even about being conservative. It's just that I just don't care too much about that software. It's I buy it because I need one specific thing from it. And then an issue also with stuff being subscription based is that then the software developer, they need to justify their fee, and then they're going to turn it from simple calculator app to now it's a full math suite or something, or it's a simple grocery shopping list, and now it's suddenly an ecosystem for shoppers, right? It turns into something it wasn't supposed to be, and then you inevitably have to switch away and go to something else. Good fun. So the latest versions of ZBrush are really very similar. There really isn't too much difference between the versions. Again, like the main difference is that you generally can't open the different versions. The brushes are very similar. There are some additional features here and there, but you probably wouldn't really notice unless you know exactly what to look for. But the iPad version is legit really good. We made a tutorial on this just when it came out. And yeah, very, very enjoyable to use. Just playing around with the proportions for a little dub. When you sculpt, do you keep your pen off the tablet for the entire stroke, or do you keep it off for each stroke? Yeah, I can explain that. So let's say I'm sculpting here now. pen is on, pen is off, pen is on, pen is off, pen, and just going back and forth. So yeah, just on, off constantly. Like I'm not doing one continuous stroke. It's like if you're drawing, you lift the pen a lot. If somebody here is sculpting and they're not using a pen, then you need to get a pen. If you're sculpting with a mouse, you really just need to get a tablet right away, because otherwise you're going to ruin your arm. I'm liking a lot of the gestural stuff that's happening here. It's a pretty wacky looking character at the moment. Just trying to improve the gesture a little bit on his legs, trying to make it a bit more flowy. Sculpting with a mouse is like drawing with a brick. Yes, sir. Yes, it is. I think I said something very similar like that on a YouTube video once, because it's exactly how I feel. Yeah, it's not just a sensitivity, it's also just the it's also just that your arm is twisted and you're constantly clicking. So you like click, 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 and that uses your index finger. While when you're sculpting, you're using your whole hand and your whole arm, and you can sculpt with your elbow basically. So you can really make sure your arm and hand survives a lot longer. If you're constantly clicking, you just get into trouble. You see this with gamers a lot as well, who is playing games where you click a lot, just get tons of issues. Ergonomics is a serious issue. It's not just a grandpa thing. I started having my first serious ergonomic issues with sculpting when I was, what, 19, I think. I started with sculpting way too young. And should be an age limit on these things, because I really screwed up my hand, because I just sculpted all day, like for a very long time. And learned a lot about sculpting, but my God, I had issues with my arm for years. I had to learn some stretches, and I had to learn some techniques for that. One of the biggest things that actually helped me is using a drawing glove. I'm using a drawing glove called Doki Wear. I think it's called like this, Doki, and then Wear. They used to not be in production during COVID, I think, because I think there were supply side issues or something, but supply chain issues, but I think they're back in stock. I bought a new one about a year and a half ago or something, and the last one was literally falling apart. So I'm using that all the time. Every single day I'm sculpting, which I'm doing pretty much every single day. I'm using my Doki Wear. Like, you just use whatever you want to. There are probably tons of cheap ones off Amazon, but this is just something I use every single day. So it's really saved my hand. It's not that it doesn't keep me warm or anything. It's just that it makes my hand slide on the keyboard a lot easier. So there's basically no friction when I'm sculpting now. Well, if you don't have a glove like this, there's going to be a lot of friction, because there's a little bit of sweat on your hand. So it just lags a little bit, and it's like the whole thing with like Chinese water torture, right? It's not that one drip is going to impact you a lot. Same with one stroke of the pen is not going to do a lot of it, or even a week or a month. But if you sculpt a lot over longer periods of time, it catches up to you. Eventually, this stuff catches up to you. I see this whenever I go to teach somewhere. You can often see this when you're going to schools and you see the first years and they're super enthusiastic and they're working all the time. In the second years, you have some people who are embracing ergonomics and some people who are just crunching like crazy. And then third year, you have people they have RSI up to their ears, right? They need maybe even surgery, because they're working in a silly way. They've been either working way too much or not thought about ergonomics whatsoever, or they just been never taking breaks, or no sleep, or no recovery, or no gym or anything. And that is how you permanently ruin your arm. I remember in the first year of university, good old 2011, I worked so much that at some point I was legitimately afraid I might have to drop out, because I couldn't actually use my arm without significant pain because of that. What happened was that I just sculpted way too much, and then I started sculpting with I sculpted with my hand, right? So then I started sculpting with my elbow. Then I got issues in my forearm, and then I got issues in my shoulder as well. So it all just trickled down and completely ruined my arm for a long time. So I had to really find stretches to help me there, going to the gym and taking breaks. And we had a software in school called Workrave. You can still install that. It's a free software, and it just generally reminds you to take breaks, and it will give you a really, really annoying warning. It looks like it's from 2006, and being like, "Hey, buddy, time to take a break now." I think it's sheep that pops up on your screen, and it's really handy because it reminds you to take breaks, and you're going to be super pissed at it because it's ruining your flow, and it's going to save your hand. Like, I really take that stuff seriously. It's I think if I didn't take that stuff seriously, gym, rest, and such, I would not be able to sculpt today. And I'm sculpting a fair bit like these days, actually. So, and I can keep sculpting for what feels like forever now because I'm taking these precautions. Also, one thing that helped me a lot is I raised my monitor a lot. So my monitor is, it's basically like on like equivalent of like 4 books, so that the screen is eye height for me now. So I'm currently looking in the middle of the screen. So currently, like, my eyes are here, and if I had to lower my neck all the time, I would be in trouble. And also, I bought a really good chair as well. When some years ago we invested in the Flippos and Herman Miller Aeron chairs. If they're quite expensive, but they're spelled like this, Aeron. You can usually get them pretty cheap for like refurbished. So I think we got ours for like $400, and that is one of the best investments we made in terms of our health. Like I can sit on this for ages, and I can't really sit on the sofa or sit on regular chairs because I've been sitting for too long on crappy chairs. So if I lost all my possessions and I had to rebuy everything for an office or something, I would have bought the Herman Miller Aeron again, like day one. It's so good specifically for me. Like, maybe as some people's bodies are very different and it doesn't work for them, but for me it's cost me, like, it's what it costs has been earned back many folds. I really ruined my hips and such when I was living in Japan, and we sat on really crappy chairs for a long time. So that is still something I have an issue with. So I need to buy really expensive shoes as well for that. So I need to buy basically the high end trainers with all the cushioning, all the padding in the foot because of the same issue. So, man, ergonomics, seriously important. If I'd had a good chair in the beginning and a good drawing glove and such, I would have been in a much better spot now. Well, not now because I've fixed a lot of this after some physiotherapy and all that, but I would have avoided a lot of pain. You still working out? Yep. Gotta do that. Gotta keep active. Usually when I work out now, I'm optimizing for my energy levels. I don't really care too much about a highly structured program, but I found that if I do really heavy lifts, just the heaviest stuff I can do, I just get an energy boost, which lasts me a lot longer. So what I'm doing is essentially down to pull-ups, squats, and deadlifts, and just keeping it simple. Compound lifts is the way to go for me, at least. I'm 6'5". I never moved to Japan. Yeah, that's quite tall. I'm not 6'5", and I almost had issues when I moved to Japan. I lived in Airbnb the first week, and the first day we arrived. We've been traveling for such a long time, like 28 hours or something, and been carrying heavy luggage and such, and heavy backpacks. And there was a beam in the apartment, and I could walk under it perfectly fine with like some clearance, and then I woke up the next morning and I just banged my head into it because my spine was so compressed. So it was noticeable. It's the first time I noticed that my height varied during that. Morton's a bit taller than me, and he had issues in Japan with that, and I just was just under all the beams. But yeah, if you're like, I guess like 6'5" is like 194, and I'm 195 or something in non-freedom units, then yeah, you're gonna have a hard time. Like the Dutch in Japan would be would be banging their heads constantly, I think. What's your favorite exercise and least favorite? Favorite, I think, is deadlifts. It just really just fills me with joy. Just really good. I really enjoy pull-ups as well. Least favorite is anything yoga. I really should do yoga, but I'm crazy stiff, so it's always genuinely painful to do it, which is why I should do it. But yeah, anything mobility-wise, hate doing that. Look at you tall people in the comments. Yeah, so I'm just trying to stylize him a bit now. Just going over and just trying to make him a bit plainer. It takes time to go over this. It's you just have to go over and refine it. Something which is really important when you're sculpting, even if you're doing something that which is like quote unquote messy like this, is to have clean shapes. When you're doing this kind of stuff, the reason this kind of stuff can look good is kind of because of the textures and the interesting shapes, but you can't be messy in your approach. You have to have clean, solid shapes, even though you can have like spices in it, right? But you just need it to be fundamentally clean. And this is something that's really difficult when it comes to sculpting. That is clean shapes. If you have good clean shapes, then you have a good chance at an appealing character. And if you have messy shapes for me isn't even like complex shapes. It's uncontrolled shapes. It's shapes that are just not really well thought out. And I have tons of that in my sculpt at the moment. I find myself solving technical issues more than anything else on the subject, and it's causing me to lose a bit of interest. Is that normal? Well, depends on what the tech issues are. For me, tech issues are often comes from either like fundamentally faulty like hardware, so that, or like just crazy buggy software, so that if you keep having issues, there might actually be a driver issue and you have to update that, or maybe your graphics card just isn't good enough. But it can also be down to a lack of understanding of how the process works. Because let's say you're trying to bake something and you don't really understand baking, then you're constantly going to be battling with what's presumably tech issues, right? Or if Maya keeps crashing all the time, most likely, unless you're using XGen, because XGen is terrible, then it's probably how you're working. Because Maya is... Look, somebody who knows how Maya works is not going to have a very crashy Maya. And of course, you can argue that's a Maya issue. You shouldn't have to know Maya for that. But one of the things, for instance, in Maya is that it's node-based. People don't know it as node-based. Everything in Maya is a node. And that means that when you sculpt or you're modeling and you're doing anything, you can see that if you do an extrusion, it adds history to it. So there's an extrude thing in your history stack. That's not really a history thing per se. It's not like a modifier stack like you have in Blender or you have in Max. What you have is a node. It's just represented as a thing that's added on top of it. But if you go into the hypershade or the node graph, you can see the connection here. So if you're having a hard time with Maya, for instance, specifically Maya, it's probably down to not really understanding how that works. But yeah, it also depends. Like sometimes stuff is just crashy and annoying. But whenever you're sculpting or you're working with this, it generally shouldn't be something you should have to tech fix all the time. If you're 3D modeling, polygon is a polygon. As long as your scenes are clean, shouldn't be that crashy, and it should just work. If you're assigning materials, your texture painting, this kind of stuff should just kind of work. So yeah, you just got to figure out that where your issues are coming from, because there might be a fundamental issue. Or it might be that you need to do some more tutorials and different things. Or maybe you're just unlucky and it's just crashy what you're doing. Some scenes are just very, very, very crashy. Do you have a Discord server? Yeah, we do. Let's see if I can bring that up. Let's see if I can... Discord. So I'm just going to share the Discord server. We have a Flipmoment's Discord server. So I'll post that here. Yeah, so here's a comment. Also, most of the time you don't need 30 million polygons. This is something that's you know, a thing with ZBrush as well. If you're dealing with really high polygons, man, stuff gets annoying to work with. So then it's oh Jesus Christ, this is scary. Then it's about knowing what to. It's really about knowing what to do in texturing and such, instead of just doing all in ZBrush. Is it better to do rigging before fleshing out a sculpt, or is rigging just the next step after a model is complete? Yeah, the simple answer here is rigging is something you do once the model is fully done. You can texture concurrently, I suppose, next to rigging, but you really want to make sure the model is fully done. Now, in a production, you really should do rig tests before the character is fully done. Like, take a sculpt, rig test it, see how the design is working and such. But for all practical purposes, for your own projects, yeah, you need to finish the topology, finish the model, and then you publish the model or you save it out, and then from there you rig it afterwards. Like, rigging linearly is in a process is right after modeling. Just going to unify the model a little bit. We're just going to make it a bit more boring, but it's for the greater good, because I will go in and I'll mess it up later on. I just need to make sure my design is tight enough, so that at least the anatomy is tight enough, so I don't run into any issues with that. Do you have any courses focused on look development in Blender? Not actually sure. I don't think we have a lot for, we don't have a lot of exclusives, at least for that, like, which are made by myself or by Morten. But we can have a look. So let's have a look here. So one of the ones we looked at before was 3D Tutor, these guys here. And I recommend just having a look at what these guys have. These guys have really, really, really solid courses for tons of stuff in Blender. A lot of these are also more beginner focused, like, you know, here we have modeling bootcamp and such. So there are a lot of stuff here. They also have really, really, really cool stuff for geometry nodes. Crazy amount of stuff here, like roof tile generator. Great. You can really go into that and learn how that works. But yeah, we just have tons of really cool products, and I'm just excited to show off the site, because until recently we had a very slow site, and now we have a very fast site. Check it out. Click. Boom. It's there. So yeah, really cool stuff. I'm very happy with how the site is currently. It's in a good spot. And we have tons of products, really, really cool stuff. This is one I should actually show you guys. This is one made by Fast Track Tutorials. And just really cool. This one was released yesterday, and we just featured this in our newsletter and on social media. It's been selling quite well. So very, very cool tutorial here. It's like 55 hours, and it goes through the whole character creation. So I do really recommend checking this one here out. This one is very cool. It's for game development. Fast Track Tutorials in general, they just have absolutely brilliant tutorials. They have tons of cool stuff for environments. It's made by Emil Sligers, who actually used to work for Flipnormal some years back, and he's made a lot of our exclusives as well. So they're just doing a lot of really cool stuff with environments and characters as well. I have a specific question. Do you know if our model will be moved to animators in production? Do I need to delete hidden mesh on the cloth from low poly, or do I need to give the model to animators for a cloth? So I don't actually understand your question. Is Flipnormals more than one person? Yes, it is. It's myself, and then it's Morten Jaeger, and then we have one more full-time employee, and we have developers that we're hiring in as well. So that's all made by a development team. But yeah, it was founded by myself and by Morten, and we're both full-time on Flip almost. So we've been full-time on this. We left the industry in 2018, so we've been full-time on Flip almost ever since. And yeah, this is what we're doing. In the last few years, Morten has been more in the background with more development stuff, focused on, we rebuilt the website about 2 years ago now, and it's been a lot of stuff with development, so that's where Morten has been more focused. And then I've been more focused on creating content like the shorts and streaming and such like this. But yeah, we're a pretty small team. Does a Maya user have a higher chance of entering the industry compared to Blender user? Well, that depends. I would say if you have two people who are exactly the same in terms of skills, and they both want to work at a studio that only uses Maya, like no Blender allowed for whatever reason, or it's just let's say it's VFX, which is definitely Maya focused, then I would say that the Maya user will have a better chance just because they can hit the ground running. It would take like the other artists would have to learn Maya to some degree. So you can't really just use Blender, even though if you're allowed to use Blender for certain things, you still need to use Maya. Like I talked about this in previous streams and such, but it's a real pain for everyone in the production if one person wants to use Blender. Like it's just really painful. So if you can hit the ground running, you just have better chances. For me, it's not at all about which tool is better. It would be the same if the opposite is also true. Let's say a studio is entirely Blender focused and somebody uses Maya. Cool, the Blender users have a better chance, assuming all things are equal, right? Because then you don't need to spend a few months learning the software. Like you can of course learn a software within a few weeks, but that's more like learning it intellectually, right? Where you know how to do stuff in it. But getting the muscle memory up to the same level where you can be as fast as any former software, that takes a few months easily. I don't think a lot of people would be switching from Maya to Blender or from Blender to Maya and be at the same speed they used to be within like more than a few months, unless they're really, really, really dedicating their time. So it just takes time to develop muscle memory and develop your, it's not just that, it's also like all the little quirky things. There's so many things you're working with in Maya. We're like, oh yeah, I watched a tutorial 15 years ago and this had this exact fix. Let me bring that up. So there are a lot of things like that. It's also like, it's almost like it's institutional in your brain, like stuff that you just picked up over a long period of time. So yeah, I would say it's not about Maya or Blender. It's about somebody who knows the software that the studio is hiring for. They just have a better chance. It's not that it's 100%. It's not a 100% case, right? It's not saying that no Blender user would ever be hired at a Maya studio, but you just gotta know the software people are using, which is perfectly fair. It would be like if you were hiring and if you owned a studio, you picked a software to use, you would also hire somebody who knew that software. You wouldn't be interested in teaching them that software when you could already hire somebody who already had that knowledge. I keep saying this, but when you're applying for jobs and they're hiring, you are already at a disadvantage simply because there are a lot of applicants to something or to the job. So the more you can do to remove your disadvantage, the better your chances are. And one of those disadvantages is, do you know the software or not? So if like Maya was blitzed from Earth right now and everyone used 3D Studio Max, well, you gotta learn 3D Studio Max. Doesn't matter if you enjoy it or not. It's just, if you want to make money with the software, you just gotta use the software people are using. But Blender is definitely getting more popular. Like it's gaining pretty fast. But we talked about this in a lot of videos before. It's not like particularly the film industry. The film industry is never ever going to replace Maya with Blender. Like that's as a core tool for modeling or rigging or animation. It's just there's no point in doing that. So it's not like if some dude on Twitter is saying that could happen. It's just not really gonna happen because of a bunch of different reasons. It's just not really a viable thing. If a new studio comes up and they're using Blender as their primary tool, that's a very different story. But an established studio, they're just not going to do that. Like you wouldn't see MPC going from being Maya based to Blender based. If a studio is going to switch the main software, it would have to either be because it's significantly cheaper, which in the case of Blender it is on the surface, but of course you need to develop tons of tools for that, and that's very expensive. Or it would be like, meaning if they were going to go from Maya to like Houdini or something, maybe they get crazy licensing deals. Or if it's a case that it needs to be significantly better as well at what it's doing. So if you were to switch from Maya to another software, it would just have to be much, much better. And for one of the things it's being used for a lot in industry currently is rigging and animation. And Blender is nowhere near as good as Maya is for rigging and animation. It's just not close. That's why people are still using those tools. Modeling, perfectly fine, right? It's a great competitor to it, unless you want to UV map something that's terrible. But in general, yeah, I mean, use whatever you want to use if you're starting your studio. But studios are not going to change their pipeline. That is not something that's going to happen. They are changing their pipeline though. Like they're moving away from Maya, but they're moving on to Houdini because it is better. It's better in so many ways. So if you want to do lighting, for instance, it's better because it's more procedural. You can share light rigs a lot easier way. You can like look dev is a lot easier because its node system is just better in it, and particularly if you have effects and simulation as well. Houdini is just objectively better than Maya at those parts. But nobody, like when Blender got geometry nodes, some people were like, ah, cool, I don't need Houdini anymore. That's not. But what? No, that's not the case. It's two very different software. Cakester is saying, I'm not paying over 100 a month for Maya. Yeah, you don't have to. You also have Maya Indie. A lot of people don't know about Maya Indie, and a lot of people can't access it because of it's restricted to certain countries. But Maya Indie is something like $200-300 a year. And that's a phenomenal deal for that. It does have some restrictions, but it's more like you can't use it on certain projects or something. But the software, as far as I know, is pretty much the same. So Maya Indie is great. I think 3ds Max Indie also exists. But yeah, 100 a month. That's a lot. Is ArtStation the best website to display your work portfolio? Yep. Just build an ArtStation for your portfolio. Keep it simple. Everyone knows ArtStation, and it's easy to navigate. Make sure you have your real name there. You make sure, if you're applying for jobs, make sure you have your real name, you have your contact info, and you just keep it simple. One thing with ArtStation is that, or when you're building your portfolio, is just be sure to only have your best work there. Like ArtStation or your portfolio is not a place to collect all your work. It's not a place to have your doodles and all that. A portfolio is something you're showing to people who want to, at the core, give you money for your work, for your services. So you need to just really display your best stuff. If you have some old doodles from like 5 years ago and they're terrible, just take them down, put them on a different place, put them on a different site or something, or make a collection called old work or something. Don't look here. But just be sure that recruiters are not seeing your 5-year-old doodle and they're being like, all right, cool, this is your current skill level. Yeah, making on a website I highly recommend against. I think if you're a professional, and let's say you're a professional concept artist, it can be nice because yeah, it can stand out, make it be a bit better and something. But I would say also have an ArtStation. The problem with making a website is unless you're good at it, it's a big chance the website is just gonna suck, and that's awful. Like you really, really don't want to have a website that isn't good because people are not gonna check it out. It might be that you forget to renew your domain and suddenly there is no website and you can't be contacted and all that. But I mean, I'm using a custom website for my mentorship, for instance. So, I think it's worth it for that. It does look more professional, but if you make your own website, you've got to commit to that. So if you're a student, I think it's 100% pointless to build your own website. I think that's a complete waste of time because it's going to take a few weeks to build it. Like it's not like a weekend thing. You just put it up there, at least if you want to do it properly. So it's going to take some time, and that's time you don't have as a student. But yeah, as a hardened professional, go for it. Particularly if you're a freelancer, it can be really beneficial. You just have to be sure that this stuff is up to date. Hey there, are you making Dobby? Yes, I am. I am making Dobby. Having a lot of fun with this guy. All right, let's see how long we've been going for now. We've been going for 1 hour and 40. All right, that is almost as long as I can go for. So we'll continue a little bit longer now. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, just shoot them off and I'll see how many more I can get to today. It's been nice to clean up the model now as well, because it's a lot cleaner than it used to be. Are you going to 3D print that? Nope, probably not. I'm really just doodling around, to be honest. I have no idea what I'll do with this one. I'm doing this because I'm having fun with 3D now, and it's been a while since I had fun with 3D, so I'm going back to old school Henning style. So I'm just enjoying playing around with this, to be honest. Most likely this is not going to be used for anything. I subbed. Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah, so if you're new to the channel, we have a bunch of tutorials for CG, general 3D stuff, tons of stuff for Maya, Blender, ZBrush, a lot of character stuff. So this is what we're doing. How many software do you use to finish a project? Oh, let me think. ZBrush for sculpting, Maya/Blender for retopology, and probably Maya for retopology, then Maya/Blender for general modeling, then Painter/Mari for texture painting, then Maya/Blender for shading and for final rendering and such, and then Photoshop for final grading, or if it's a video, then DaVinci Resolve for grading and such there. So quite a cocktail. That's one of the things that's fun and highly frustrating about 3D. You need a lot of software, and that gets quite expensive, and that also, it's just hard to learn. Like, you just need to keep up to date on this. It's one of the things I have to do with flip normals as well. I just have to keep up to date on all this software, and that's tricky. And then suddenly people are moving to Unreal. Now you have to learn Unreal, and people move Houdini, so you have to learn Houdini, and it's good fun. All right, but with that, I think I will, Jesus, that's scary. With that, I think I will leave you guys for now. I'll probably be back, maybe not tomorrow, but next week we're probably doing more streaming, and the Black Friday sale continues. This is going until the 6th of December, so we're going into December. So all of next week until next Friday, end of day. So yeah, tons of cool stuff. I just want to show you this one. This is one a course I made last year. This is Intro to Anatomy. This is a really nice course I made for focusing on, well, I think it's nice. It's focusing on just learning anatomy, learning all these things, focusing on all the clavicles and all this kind of fancy anatomy stuff. So if you want to learn anatomy, I think this is generally a good way to learn it. It's not too technical, but it goes into enough depth so that it's still useful when it comes to that. Nice ratings. This is my happy place. Seeing the ratings is always one thing I really enjoy. But yeah, 50% off all our own products, and also a lot of our creators' products. So we're up to almost 40,000 products now. But yeah, happy Thanksgiving to all the Yanks watching, and I'll see you guys soon.